Joann, it's great to be here with you. Why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a longtime journalist for the Wall Street Journal, where I spent my entire professional career. I am also the mother of two grown children and the grandmother of three. I'm the author of two books about women in the workplace. First one called Earning It, Hard-Won Lessons from Trailblazing Women at the Top of the Business World. And the second one is called Power Moms, How Executive Mothers Navigate Work and Life. But I think the most telling aspect of my whole career journey that might be relevant to some of your members is what happened when I was pregnant with our second child and proposed a reduced work schedule. I said that, and again, I was at the Wall Street Journal my entire career, and I had been there a while when I'm pregnant for the second time. I said I would like to work 4 days a week and take a 20% cut in pay and benefits. It
Mhm.
was turned down. I took my maternity leave. I came back to work. I was struggling. I had two kids under 4 years old. I had they were 3 years apart. And at that point, the bureau chief changed. I got a bureau chief who not only understood what working women were going through, but he was married to Judy Woodruff and they had a kid already. And then his boss, the managing editor, also had a wife who worked outside the home. So I was invited to repropose this idea, which had been turned down by prior management. And not only did I get the 4 day schedule that I asked for, but they insisted that I would be paid full-time pay, full benefits for only working a 4 day week. And what I didn't know until I reported this latest book and interviewed Al Hunt, who was my bureau chief at the time, and he said, the reason we gave you that special deal is that we were afraid otherwise you would quit the journal and go work for somewhere else. And you see, like too many other women, I undervalued my own worth. I didn't know that I was considered such an important asset to my organization. And too often we do that. We don't think about the fact that we've got leverage.
Now, that's a really important point. So, for your book, you interviewed 86 working mothers. That's a lot. So, what are some of the common predicaments or struggles that they experienced?
Well, what's interesting is in reporting this book, I was looking at two generations of women who not only had kids, but at some point in their careers became executives. And one half of that group were women in my generation, the baby boomers. And the other half were women who were anywhere from their early 30s to early 40s at the time I did these interviews. They were millennials and Gen Xers. And I think the three most common predicaments that both generations of these working moms experienced were number one, returning to work after maternity leave. Second, how to handle burdensome demands of managing the household. And thirdly, frequent business travel. Because again, I was reporting this book for the most part before COVID struck.
Interesting. So, what kind of advice do you have to help women pursue both family and a successful career?
Well, I'd like to offer a solution for each one of those most common predicaments that so many of these working moms describe to me for power moms. When it comes to returning to work, one option is to do what I did, which was to propose a reduced work schedule. Some of these women that I interviewed for Power Moms came back and worked part-time for a year or two, but never ever, in most cases, had to go to a lower level position. They basically did their prior job on a fewer days basis. If
Mhm.
that's not an option, you could also ask for a phased return to work. And there were two companies that I feature in the book. One, Rent the Runway, and I interviewed the co-founder and CEO, as well as PwC, where in both cases, working moms and dads come back at reduced hours for several months at full pay. In terms of the mother load issue, I think it's really important to pick your life partner carefully. Don't figure on things working out once you get engaged, once you get married. Talk about what's important to you in terms of having two careers, in terms of how you handle that domestic load, in terms of what you're going to do if you decide to be parents before you agree to be longtime partners. And it may come down to having to decide who or when one of you becomes a stay-at-home parent. And at the same time, you review all these things that you've agreed upon. You renegotiate what it is that you have agreed to do to support one another. In terms of the business travel issue, a number of these women I talked to for Power Moms got their kids very involved in letting them know not only when business trips were coming up, but to the extent that they could plan them around kids' school or after school activities, they involved the kids in letting them know what was coming up and whether that was going to create a conflict for them. And in at least one case, one of the younger Power Moms invited either her mother, father, or if he had vacation, her husband, to come along on a business trip so the kids could come too. And she found that this actually gave her a lot more time with her children because she was at that point traveling about 40% of the time.
Wow, those are some really great suggestions. So now what about advice specifically for women who are considering or who have already taken a career break?
Well, I think it depends on what kind of career break we're talking. If you're going out on maternity leave and expecting to come back after a multi-week or multi-month maternity leave, I think you plan for it like you would any business project. You set up a timeline, you set up the target goals that you want people to be mindful of. You give everyone what the deadlines are that are going to be coming up for projects you were involved with while you were away. And you also let people know what conditions, if any, you are going to be reachable on while you're on leave. There are some working moms I interviewed who wanted to be contacted if there was, a break the bank kind of emergency. But there were others who totally empowered their colleagues or their team to essentially do their job. If, on the other hand, you're taking a long-term exit from the workplace, multiple years, and you're not positive when you're coming back, again, don't look upon this departure from the workplace as a departure from your career. And you stay involved in as many ways as you possibly can by, number one, maintaining that LinkedIn and other professional networks. Number two, making sure that you, if you can, keep your skills up, even if it's an online course or going to a professional meeting virtually. And thirdly, you choose what volunteer activities you get involved with wisely. You're obviously not going to have a huge amount of time when you're trying to have your children and your home be your first priority. But at the same time, you want to pick volunteer activities that might enhance that resume when you go back. And when you go back, if it's not to the same company, look for a company that has what are called returnships, which I did a story about not that long ago for the Wall Street Journal, where I remain a regular contributor. And these are essentially internships for returning grown-ups, men and women alike who've taken an extended break and want to try out at being something different or being in a new workplace. You're paid for that returnship, and at the end of the returnship, usually 6 to 12 months, they decide whether to offer you a permanent job.
So now let's talk about guilt. Guilt is something that most working moms really do feel to varying degrees. It's super hard to have to choose between work and kids on a regular basis. So what advice do you have for moms in avoiding or managing these feelings?
Well, it's very ironic that you mentioned that because I've done so many podcasts related to Power Moms, many of them with men who are working dads. And every single one of them I've asked, do you have working father guilt? And they go, no, that's my wife. She's got working mother guilt. And I go, well, what about when you miss Johnny's game or turn up late to Sally's soccer match? He goes, yeah, well, feel badly in the moment, but no. And yet we many of us seem to plague ourselves with working mother guilt. And in fact, I devoted an entire chapter of Power Moms to 10 hacks to get rid of working mother guilt. And I'd like to tell you about a couple of those. I think the most important one is to try and figure out ways to arrange occasional entire days with one child at a time. And the way one of the younger Power Moms did this is she had 3 sons, and every quarter she took 3 vacation days. Each kid, each son got a mommy day. And it didn't matter what it is they wanted to do, but it was something that they looked forward to. Another hack is the idea that you look for efficiency solutions to the things that aren't super important. And again, one of the younger Power Moms said as a result, she enjoyed the 25-hour day. I was like, really? Like what? Well, she had very long hair, and she found online a very special towel that dried her hair 70% faster than a regular towel. A third hack is the idea of self-care. And the idea here is that self-care is not selfish care. If we can't take care of ourselves, we can't possibly take care of the loved ones in our lives. And I know what you're all thinking. Oh, yeah, that's great. That's easy for her to say. She doesn't have 4 kids under 5 screaming at her all the time when she's trying to do a Zoom call for work. Idea of self-care is that you take 5 minutes. Maybe you set your alarm 5 minutes before the sun comes up. And when the sun comes up, you thank the world and whoever your deity is for living to another day. And the fourth hack is the idea that we accept our imperfections. I watched on a flight home the other day a movie that came out a few years ago called Bad Moms. And in that, the star of the movie said, being a mom today is an impossible task. And so let's stop judging each other. And the person who needs to stop judging the most is you. We're all imperfect and just trying our darn best.
Well, listen, I am so appreciative of your time and your wisdom. Would you like to tell us how to reach you?
Sure. The best way to reach me is on email, Joann Lublin, JoannLublin @gmail.com. If you would like to buy a hardback version of either one of my books, I would be happy to send you a free sticker that's basically a personalized autographed book plate in which I put your name and sign my name, and you peel off the back and you stick it inside. And then guess what? When you go to sell it on eBay, it's worth more because it's been autographed by the author. I also have a website, which again is just my name, www.joannlublin.com.
Thank you so much, Joann. Really appreciative of your time.